Hello, I'm Otto, and welcome back to Dyson Sphere program. So in the last episode, we set up some blueprints. One was this one for smelting, and this is the alternate. The other one is the one that we said we were going to use, and I've since decided that I kind of like the way that this one lines up better. So we are going to be using the alternate. And I also said I wasn't going to make individual blueprints, but I did end up making individual blueprints for both the regular smelting and the alternate smelting. I've named these Smelting 1. And the reason why is because I'm going to end up having Smelting 1 for the base smelters, and then Smelter 2 for the next rank of smelters, and Smelting 3 for the final stage of smelters. And thankfully, we won't have to change anything. It'll literally just be as simple as upgrade these, copy, and make a new blueprint. So everything will work, like this will work completely fully upgraded if you want to actually manually upgrade them, or just kind of make a new blueprint either way. So there's a couple things that I want to mention. One, I completely forgot that we were oriented towards the south, facing towards the south. And the reason why that's kind of a bad thing is I had totally planned on reorienting once we got to this point. So I was going to start facing towards the north and have the blueprints go in the other direction. But this one is facing to the right and we're facing south. I want the opposite. So I have since changed all of these. I've used the alternate blueprints, and as you can see, they line up beautifully. Something else that I decided to do was we built this blueprint inside of this 10 square section. It's 10 hardline squares. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But because of the way some things are going to line up, I'm actually going to be placing them on the line, so on the meridian line. So we're going to go half a square back and half a square back over here as well. So the next set of blueprints will line up here, and you kind of get the, oh, not there. Stop moving. There we go. Like that. So you kind of get the idea. And the reason why I'm doing that is because of the mall that we're going to end up making. So in a couple of episodes, we're going to start making a mall. And the mall... Okay, so first let me explain. I've seen so many malls over the years. I've seen like temporary malls. I've seen permanent malls. I've seen sushi malls that go around the polar section. I've seen malls that kind of wrap around a polar section with the ILS. I've seen malls that are largely bus-based like this, or like stacking belts, bus-based. And I find that there's a lot of issues with many of them. One of the issues that I find with, for instance, this was never going to be permanent, and I believe I said that multiple times. This was just a temporary thing. I don't want to utilize the middle of the planet for a mall. Even though we have tons of planets and we're never going to fill up all of them, like your computer would crash before you filled up every single planet with a middle section like this, I still don't want to use that. Like, I'm just not a fan. Same with like burying things. Like, unfortunately, we are going to have to bury things, and I'm just generally not a fan. I would prefer to consume all of it or relocate it. Doesn't really matter. Like, we are going to be burying things, and that just kind of is what it is.
Mineral depleted.
But our mall is, whoops, is going to be going around this section. So these two rings, we are largely going to have be our mall section. And you might be looking at that and going, wow, that's a lot of real estate. That is a lot of wasted space. Let's say quote unquote wasted space. But inside of this ring, we're going to end up having 64 different ILSs, the interstellar logistics stations. And each one of those is going to be responsible for at least one item, sometimes more than one. So one example is like the sorters. We're going to have 2 ILS down that are making all 4 of the sorters between the 2. And the way that we're going to set that up is we are going to start placing on the Tropic line that is in this section here. So this section here. So once we get past this thicker section, we're going to start placing them here, and then from here we can go up and down with the other ILS. So I'm just going to give a quick example of what I mean by that. So this is where the Tropic line is. So we're going to be placing this one on the Tropic line. And then the next one down here will be placed at exactly the point that we can place it, not past. So you might be wondering, why am I not putting it on this Tropic line? And the reason why is because once we start lining these up, you can see that this section here is the next most available spot. And then over here, same thing. The next most available spot is the spot that it's going to go. So this will wrap around the planet and work out perfectly as it comes down to the other side. But once we get to some sections, so if we want to try to line this up, you can kind of see that once we get to the Tropic line, it always favors the side that is on the equator. So these would not line up perfectly if we were to put this on the Tropic line, and I need these to line up perfectly. So that's why we're going one single tiny little block in. Same here, which is literally the most available spot. Now that's going to make things a little bit tighter in here because we are going to be fitting up to 4 of the assembling machines, something like this. So it is going to make things a little tight at times, but you know what, that's okay. I have some workarounds. We're going to make sure that this is still easy to follow, and yeah, that's what the mall is going to end up looking like. And the reason why I decided to go with this type of mall or design this type of mall is largely because when you're looking at other malls, they basically are made for their time, right? So you might look at malls from like 4 years ago, and there's a lot of machines that have been added since then, so those malls don't work because they literally had exactly the amount of ILS needed, or the amount of machines needed to make exactly what was available for that time period. Same with the sushi mall, I believe. I haven't really looked into it, but even with the sushi mall, like there's an exact, like basically the exact number of buildings that you need to make what we currently have is the amount of buildings that you have being like crafting stuff. I don't think that there's much room for anything else to be added. But with this type of system, we would end up placing another one of these here. And we're largely not going to be using this third ring over here. It will be available if there are other things that you might want to add. So for instance, if you wanted to literally have every single item, then you could have literally every single item. Anyways, enough of that. Let's get, I did actually want to keep that just for reference. So because we're going to be lining those up on these lines, using those as a reference point, I figured, you know what, let's try to line up as much as we can. Like, it's not always going to line up. Like that third row back here, that will not line up with the rest of the ILS stations that are in this first band. And it certainly won't line up with these, but you know what? Close enough. Something else that I want to point out before we continue on. Once we get to this bigger band here, this section here, you'll notice that the squares kind of change. So where we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in this section here around the equator, we only have 4 in the next section. So we're going to continue to follow that kind of pattern, because you can see that this line perfectly splits, where this would be 5, this one up here would be 4. So we're going to continue to follow this up here as well. So we will create builds that either use 4 of these bigger hardline squares, or we will use builds that make 8. This gives us a lot more freedom to make, you know, kind of monster builds. And you'll kind of see that more when we get into the Fractionators. The build that I have for Fractionators is absolutely amazing. It's pretty large, so we can take up the majority of this space. And yeah, it's going to be great. Anyways, so like I said, I did place some of these, obviously. I didn't place all of them. One, because I wanted to get rid of this, but I wanted to show it before we kind of continued on. Something else that I'm doing that I might have mentioned, but I have been farming a little bit of soil. So I did go to the other planet, farmed up a little bit of soil. I also did mention that we are going to farm the dark fog on this other planet. I've since changed my mind with that as well. So when it gets to the point where we have a military capable of taking on these 4, we're just going to go and demolish them. Same thing with the hive in the middle. Once we get to the point where we can get rid of this, we're going to get rid of it. We will do a lot of the farming on other planets, but that also means that soil is going to be a little bit of a problem. I have been farming soil on this planet a bit. There's not, like, you can't get all the soil that you need from just this planet or even just this other planet over here. And certainly closing off the relay stations, definitely doesn't help, because that uses like almost 100,000 soil. So once we get to the point where we can take out the hive, we're going to take out the hive. Anyways, moving into this episode, so I have not turned any of these on. As I made these blueprints, I set them up, I set them up in a way that they are 0, so they have not allowed anything to come in and be crafted, and they have not allowed any of the material to come in to craft those items. And that is the most manual thing that you would have to do with these blueprints. So every time I drop one of these blueprints, we're going to have to set the amounts here. The reason why I did that is because it's pretty irritating when you like drop a blueprint. You haven't even like, you've just started placing all the buildings, but all of a sudden everything's coming in, and oh man, maybe I need to move this thing. Like, it's just a huge pain to have these items here before you're 100% sure that these are the placements for these buildings or these blueprints. So I did opt to not place any of these. Sorry, not have items come in. I'm also going to actually use one of the blueprints. Let's say the diamond. And I'm just going to place it and force it down, because I want the... Why so many foundations? Excuse me. Oh, you know what? I completely forgot to remove some of the foundations. I did this in a blueprint world. Alright, so let's just do this. That's better. And then I'm going to remove all of this other stuff. We're not actually placing it. I just wanted to be pretty efficient with the foundation placement. Okay, so we're going to pull out an ILS. And we're going to try to remember we're going a half a square back. So when we make a build, we need to have it be like a half a square back from this as well. So the next point would be here for the halfway point, and then would be here. For a full point. So we need to keep that in mind. Something else, because of the way that we were setting up the other machines, so if I were to put this here, that means the most exterior line is going to be here. So this is going to be the kind of like threshold of almost like the parameters that we're going to be setting for ourselves. So let's set one up over here as well.
Insufficient materials.
There. So this is kind of like the section of space that I can take up. As the build that would be, let's say over here. Where am I? Oh, foundation. Always foundation. So that build, it would have a similar section. It would have this section here. So we're only going to be using, you know, the space that we kind of need right now. And it's okay if we don't fill out all of this section anyways. So I was kind of getting towards it, but the reason why I haven't enabled these is largely because we're going to have power problems as soon as we do. So we need to get power stabilized. We have 245 megawatts available. We're only using 85 right now, but once we turn these on, if we were to turn all three of these on, it would jump probably at least close to this, maybe higher. So we're gonna need to do some stuff with power. Now, I did say that we were gonna do a couple things in this episode, and they're, you know, we're still gonna kind of follow that. There's a couple things that we're gonna be doing in the next episodes coming up, but for now, we do need to focus on power a little bit. So I was kind of hoping to avoid doing hydrogen fuel rods, but we are gonna do hydrogen fuel rods. We're gonna limit this to 1,000. If I can stop moving pixels. And we're going to bring in hydrogen and we're going to bring in titanium. We're only going to bring in 1,000 of each of them. Come on. Like, honestly.
Mineral depleted.
And I'm not going to request them in yet. So the way that we're going to end up setting this up is I'm going to make a build that is a 2 ingredient. I'm going to solve our like 2 ingredient build. So what I mean by that is we're going to have assembling machines, and we're going to have an ingredient coming out. Whatever the main ingredient is going to be on the outside edge. Same here. This is the main, whatever the ingredient is that has the most. And then down the middle, whatever ingredient has the least is going to be in the middle, assuming that it doesn't need to be next to the machine. We are then going to take our stations, and we can get 10 of these in. Let's just make it a little bit more compact. There we go. You can overlap this section like this. So my reasoning is I want to be able to get a belt through to the back of the ILS or PLS. So as long as you can do that, then this is back far enough. But we don't need the extra room, so we're going to pull these back one more like that. I can set 10 of these down. I want an outgoing belt. And just because I want a second outgoing belt for another set of machines over here. So these are both going to be outputting onto those 2 lines. And the reason why I'm doing the 2 lines is because there's some items. So for instance, the electric circuits and the the magnetic coils, the circuit boards and the magnetic coils, they produce things pretty fast and they spit out 2 at a time. So these produce 2 per second each. So they would need to have their own belts. So we might as well just make this one build and have all of them go out on their own lines. And then we can bring in the main item on the inside belt, which is preferable, and the not main item in from the back. That is easy enough. So let's get this side down. Main item coming in, and the not main item in from the back. Okay, so once we've figured that out, there's obviously some other things that we need. One, I do not need this guiding line anymore. We are not adding or taking away anymore. We need to figure out the sorters. So one thing that I like to do, now had I made this one back, it might have made the power poles a little bit different. We can now actually place the power poles on the back side of these assembling machines rather than having to be in between the last 2. But one of the things that I like to do is I like to have my sorters be kind of far back on the machine. So instead of having like this one up here, you know, something like this, I like to kind of make sure that they stay on the back side, at least for this middle section. So it would look something like this. And the reason why I do it this way is just in case you ever wanted to add in the spray coaters. This does leave a little bit of a section here for you to be able to do that. So again, I'm not going to be adding in spray coaters to most of the builds in this run, but that is why I like to leave as much room up here as possible. So there's that, and then we need an output. So the output is going to be the pile sorter. That can just go right in the middle. Same for the inputs over here. We can just input, you know, from the front. You can do it on the back too, just to kind of match up with these if you want. Actually, let's just, I mean, might as well, right? There's lots of room for the sorters over here, so. All right, that is, nope. Did I place those in the right direction? I'm not sure if I did, so I'm just going to do it again. Out and out. Okay, so that is our build. And before we do anything else, I just want to get all the sorters down and get power. So as for the power poles, we are going to have it be just on the outside lane, just on the inside of the outside lane. And then we can get rid of these belts. We could actually get rid of this one too. No point in having useless belts. And then we're just going to place them every 2. And that will line up to the front here. And there we go. That gives us full coverage. Also, you got to have one for the tower. Sometimes the builds just kind of work out that we could, you know, we don't have to have a separate one for the tower, but you know, it is what it is. So this is going to be our blueprint, and for now, I'm just going to use now because I do want to hold on to a template because I am going to be making... Oh, I need to clear these. So the reason why I'm clearing these is because I can have a template for making other blueprints. But I did copy all of this as its own, so this one I can use as a template, and this one we can actually use for the fuel. Go gadget bots. Man, having these things is so awesome. I know I say it all the time, but it really is. Okay, so let's also set up the whatchamacallit, the recipe. Copy and paste all these over. Okay, and there we go. So at this point, we can go ahead and activate these. So I'm going to request in both locally and remote, and this one I'm going to request in locally and remote. We can make sure that it is working properly. What are we at? 25 minutes? Okay, so I was hoping to get a bit more done, but obviously I had quite a bit of explaining to do. But one thing that I can say at this point is, yeah, we made this build for the hydrogen fuel rods, but this build is usable for basically anything that requires 2 items. So we could have circuit boards be in here. We would just need to make sure that the iron is in slot 2 and the copper is in slot 3, as an example. We could also do the magnetic coils here, 2 ingredients, so whichever one needs more. So the rings, the magnets would be on the inside track. There's a couple of other things too. So what else? Let's see. The plasma exciters, same situation. And I will end up making blueprints for all of these. The electric motors is 3. Oh, never mind. It's 3. What else? The turbines. Yep, that is 2. So you kind of get the idea. This one single blueprint is going to be usable for all the different types of items that only require two materials, but also are obviously usable in the assembling machine. Yeah, so anyways, I am going to go through and not the stuff like this, so I wouldn't make a massive build for these, but we are going to need a little bit bigger builds for these, and we'll get into that later. But you get the idea. So I'm going to end up making several blueprints for these, even for stuff that we don't have yet, like the photon combiner. And I will end up making some blueprints for that. And then in the next episode, I'll go over that. But for now, there are a few other things that I want to do. One, we are starting to have some problems. So we are having crazy iron problems. We still have 104,000 iron over here, but the problem is that there's so many veins that have been depleted that we can't really fill any of these belts. So at least for now, as a temporary band-aid, we're going to add some iron to come in over here. I want it to be a small amount, 500, maybe 1,000. We're going to request in, and we're going to set the other one to depot. The reason I'm setting the other one to depot is because I don't want this exporting or importing anything. So I'm just going to set it as the gray, which means, hey, don't do anything remotely between star systems or between planets. So I'm going to set that to the iron. And similar to other things that we've done, I'm doing this on the side, not directly in. That way this can be, you know, this can continue to feed from this, because I do want to deplete this first rather than whatever else I have coming into here. Okay, so we're also going to upgrade some of our belts. And we're going to extend this. Okay, I don't have any of the Mark II sorters, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to upgrade these, because I do have the Mark III sorters on me. And then we can add some in between. Alright, so that'll beef up our iron. A lot of our iron is getting sucked up over here. You know what else we could do? We could also have some iron over here somewhere. Yeah, so let's add that in. We still need a lot of this to be able to make iron items. So even though we have a lot of these blocked off, I do need some stuff every now and then. So for instance, you can kind of see that this iron line here, yeah, it's lacking. So this is just going to allow us to start stockpiling a little bit more of this stuff. Can I do anything about this? Let's see. Grade 2, let's go all the way out to the... So we're going to cut this off kind of by upgrading that, and then I'm going to shift and upgrade all the rest of them. That way some of those materials can get down to this faster, because I do need a few more of the thermal powers. So we're going to be making some of the hydrogen fuel rods, and maybe we need somewhere to put them, somewhere to generate power. Well, we have these large sections in between our middle bands and where the mall is going to go, so we can definitely add some of that stuff in here. Hopefully I got most of that. We will find out shortly. Eventually we will have this whole concrete covered in concrete. Okay, so we're going to start with this, and we're just going to bring in a... Oh, we are out of those. We're going to bring in a single line of hydrogen fuel rod, and I'm only going to request in, let's say maybe 300, and then we're going to set this to remote depot. So that's going to bring in our 300, and we're going to have a single line coming out through the middle, which will be our fuel rods. So we have a couple of options. We can either use up the 4 section, which covers from here to here, because that's 1 square here, 2, 3, and then 4, because we're half a square back here, which means that we're half a square back here. Or we can use up the 8 section. We're probably going to leave room to have both. So we're going to have this, again, have the option to come all the way back out here. But for now, we're only going to set up little sections. So I'm going to have just the section in the front for now. And the way that we're going to set that up is we're actually going to put this as close as possible. And this is the first line. We can't go 6 deep, unfortunately. So all of these machines will need to be left alone. So we can go 5 deep over here, but we can also go 6 deep over here. And we want to start from whichever side is closest to the poles, and we're going to drag this through. So we can at least do 4. 4 would take up the initial section. And if we wanted to add more, we can add 5 more. 4 more. Why does that feel not right? It's because it's not right. This would be able to go out to here. Yeah. So we could do as many as 5. Again, just as long as this section here is good to go, then we are good to go. What would be the meridian, or not quite a meridian line, but what would be this line here is where we would have placed the towers before. We're just going to follow that line and half a block back, and as long as we can squeeze something in there, then we're good to go. Okay, so from here, however much room we're going to end up using, we can just drag these through. I don't think we have enough of the thermal power plants to be able to completely fill this up, but let's just see how far we can go. That was wrong. We need to tab a couple times to space these out. There we go. These should all line up the same way. And how many more do we have? 4? Okay, well, that gets us kind of into it. And we can always go back and get some more later. Okay, so into that one and into that one. So I'm individually clicking these because if you were to try to take it and drag it, it just, for some reason, it doesn't like lining them up. But if we do it this way, it will work just fine. So we can comb right back over the way that we did it the first time. And then tab through this one. And there we go, that one is set up. And then the other side. Alright, now we just gotta give it a little bit of a power boost. And there we go. Alright, so we were at 200 and something before, and now we are going to be well over 400. We are on a little bit of a time limit though, because this is most certainly going to tank our hydrogen. So we're in a little bit of a rush now to get to easier access hydrogen. Before we go though, we are going to be taking care of the dark fog soon. Let's see, all of these are up and running. 416, that's not bad. And then we still have room for 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, an extra 20, so this will definitely go up a bit. Alright, but that's going to put us in a very good spot for fractionators. So unfortunately we didn't get around to fractionators, but we will do that in the next episode, and that is going to be a good episode because the fractionator build that I have is absolutely amazing. It is the absolute peak that you could possibly have. And I might even show off one of my older builds, something Like, just to kind of show you that, you know what, you can't always get it right the first time. Sometimes things just look hideous. A little bit of, walk down memory lane for myself to see like what was my first attempt at this like. Anyways, that is going to be it for me for this episode. Like I said, in the next episode, we're definitely going to do fractionators, and I was hoping to get to it. I actually have 25 of them. We need 24 for the build that we're going to make. So we're going to do that in the next episode. We're going to place a lot more of the builds that I have prepped. And in between this episode and the next, I am going to set up some blueprints for a lot of this type of stuff. Like I said, anything that can take two ingredients, and it makes sense, I'm going to set up a blueprint for those. I probably won't have all these be in their own book, because it'll be a little bit of a problem to find it. At least with smelting, you kind of know what's going on, but for these other ones, I might just leave these bookless, let's say. But that is what we're going to do in the next episode. Fractionators and probably a couple of other builds too. We need to, work up to what we already have, let's say. Okay, I will see you in the next episode, and thanks for watching.